Welcome to the R video tutorial, Quantmod Part 4. So here we're still bootstrapping forecasts using the Quantmod package. This is a continuation of the last video, so you might want to go back and watch it because we're going to use all of the code that we had last time in this one. So I have a fresh instance of R running, so I'm going to run back through it, but you're not going to be able to catch up if you're just trying to start typing this from here. All right, so I'm going to read in the Quantmod library. I'm going to read in my Apple stock, and I'm going to get my weekly returns, which is what I've been playing with up to now anyway. Once I get those, I'm going to plot the stock across weeks so that I can see what it looks like. And this is on the returns, so it's not the actual stock data, the raw data. It's the returns of this, and you can see what we were playing with there. We then moved on to the histogram, and the histogram is our empirical distribution of what the returns look like. So we're not assuming it's a parametric distribution like I mentioned in the last video. And some of the things we were going to need is we were going to need the last value that we had, because that was an important value to have. And I created a plot window for our results here, and what we did is we ran this across a whole bunch of bootstraps to pull out what the possible returns might look like. And this is all the code that we came up with last time. Now we're going to modify this. I'm going to run it real quick just so to remind you of what we did. But what it does is it's going to plot some lines on here. And I have them colored gray this time. Last time I think I left them in Technicolor, but it was driving me nuts. So anyway, we sample from the returns. We're going out 12 weeks. I have a replace equals true, so each one is equally likely to be sampled. Then I turn it into an actual multiplier. Then I cumulative product it so that I can get a compounding interest or compounding returns. And then here I turn it back into numerical values in terms of an actual stock price based off where we left off. And then I turn that into a time series that's weekly. And then I plot it, and you can see the trajectories here. So here are our trajectories across this time frame. Now, what I might want to know is this thing going to go below zero? So that's our question, is how do I use this bootstrapping to come up with some sort of probability that this process, my Apple stock, will go not below zero, but I want to know if it goes below 150, because if you remember from last time, I said suppose I bought it at 150. What I want to know is it going to go below 150, and what's the frequency of that occurring? So what I'm going to do here is I am going to create a container that will hold zeros and ones of whether our trajectory went below our 150 or not. So that's the first thing I'm going to do, is create a container. Create a container for the results. Okay, and I'm going to call this out1 because this is my output. I'm going to repeat 0 up to, let's see, 1,000 times, because that's how many times I actually run this. So these two must match. One is how many times I'm going to do it, and this one has how many spots I have to keep track of this. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to come down here. I have my actual value 2. We can work with value 2 or value 3. I'm going to work with value 2 because it's easier. So the first thing I'm going to do is, okay, so we're going to call this a flag variable. And what it's going to do is it's just going to assign ones or zeros. So it's going to be, I'm going to call this flag 1, and it is going to be if else. Here. I'm going to look at value 2 because that's what I was interested in. And if it goes below 150, which is the number I was worried about, I'm going to give it a 1, otherwise a 0. Okay, so I can actually run this right now because I've ran through everything. And on our last instance, if I look at value 2, I can actually see what those values were in this trajectory. And you can see this one I'm making money left and right, which is great that I'm making money left and right. So what I want to do is I want to keep going with this on making the money, and I want to see, did it ever go below? So if I run this if else, it's going to give me zeros and ones. Okay, and here it's all zeros because it never did go below 150. Okay, so I'm going to write this into what I call flag 1, and this is a length 12 because it looked at each and every single value along there. And it says, are you below 150? If you are, give me a 1, otherwise a 0. So now I'm going to play a math trick on it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make out 1 here, the ith iteration, equal to the product of flag 1. And the reason I'm going to do this is I know that when I multiply all the 1s together, I'm going to get 1s. If I multiply any 0 together, I'm going to get a 0. It only takes 1 0 to make this happen. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to flip this around. Okay, I'm going to make this greater than, and I'm going to make this one 0, and I'm going to make this one 1. So if it's always above 1, or always above 150, it's going to be zeros. If it's below 150, it's going to be a 1. Okay? And I can either do the product or I can use the minimum. So I'm going to do the minimum of this. And if I know if it's a 1, then I know that I went below 0. And it only takes 1 time below 0, because if you're like me, you're going to panic if it goes below 0 and you're going to freak out. Okay? So here I'm going to store the result, and that way we can look at it later. Okay, so let's run this really quick, and then we can think about how to deal with out 1. I'm also leaving the picture in because I like the picture. And it's running. And it stored all my results. It created my new picture over there. And wow, look at this trajectory. Remember, these are random, so this may not show up on yours, but boy, did that one go way up there. It's up near 300. I'd be like loving it in the next 12 weeks if I basically double my money. But I didn't buy the stock, so it doesn't matter anyway. Okay, so let's just take the mean of out 1, and this will tell me the proportion of time, or proportion of these trajectories that went below 0. And you can see it's 0. And that's because I chose the minimum, and you should have stopped me, right? Because it should be the maximum, right? Because when I do the maximum, it's 0 and 1, right? If I'm above 0, it's going to be 150. If I'm below, it's going to be the maximum. It's going to go to 1, so I want to play with the maximum. So I run it again. And this is often how you program. You say, oh, I think this will work. And then it doesn't, so I'll try something else. And I purposely put this in here so that you can see that often doing this is just a little bit of trial and error. Okay, so my run is done. Ooh, I have another trajectory I love over here. But I didn't buy the stock, so it doesn't matter. Okay, so I run the mean on this, and this tells me what proportion of these samples actually went outside of 150. Only had to go out once, and it's telling me that only 2% of the samples actually went outside of the 150 or below 150, which means I shouldn't really worry about it. I mean, I look here and I'm like, oh my gosh, all these samples are down there, but that really only consists of 2% of all the sample paths that could go on. So that's kind of the probability that this thing's going to dip below 150 anytime between now and the end of our quarter, which is the 12 weeks. All right, so hopefully this has got you going on this use of bootstrapping. On the next one, we're actually going to play around with the actual values of this that are spit out, and we're going to try to get the quantiles from it so we could actually create something like a 95% bootstrap predictive interval. But that's in the next video. See you there.